Hello. I just reached an all-time high rating of 2072 in rapid chess, which is 10 minutes each, no time increment in this version. And that means we have 10 minutes total for the entirety of the game, which is interesting because we don't know if it's going to be decided in the middle game, the opening, or a long end game. So it's important where you spend your time, but I find that 10 minutes is enough time to just play the best game I kind of can, but it does rush you a little bit. So we get into our opening. I'm playing the Sicilian Defense, and I take here, inviting him to pile up on my knight. I'm going to turn Stockfish off for now. And then I defend. And then here's interesting. He has so much pressure here that hopping the knight out here isn't necessarily safe because he can attack it. Now that's why the pawn's here. It's allowing the bishop to defend the knight and also protecting my king, and it's also allowing this knight to hop here without this pawn being able to go because the knight's kind of handled. So he can be taken at any minute, so I can't rely on the knight to stop this advance, and that can be huge. So I have a setup against that, and I feel comfortable doing this, even though it's potentially dangerous if there's a bunch of exchanges and my bishop comes off. Then when he plays that move, if I take, he can take my queen, and in this position, my rook could recapture, but it's just something to consider. So anyway, I decided I had enough protection, enough reasons to pull this move off. And then he goes in for it. He takes. Now I have this under control. I just take back, and the bishop's under attack. And it has to go back and defend this pawn. Otherwise, my knight would have taken it. Now, in this position, normally I don't like this move in Sicilians because you get a backward pawn on d6, and the queen is looking at it, and my queen can't look at it because its bishop is in the way. And sometimes the entire game plan can involve around him controlling this square in front of my pawn, and I can't push it. And it's got no pawns to help it because it's a backward pawn because this pawn's in front. And a lot of the times in the Sicilian, this pawn has been exchanged. And I did exchange this pawn, but I also replaced it with another exchange here. So now this pawn does have support. So it's okay that I play this move because see, the pawn here on the C pawn supports my D. This backward pawn is not that big of a liability. Also, my bishop can tuck in here and keep an eye on it. And the queen indirectly defends it. And normally I don't like it, but I like it in this game because I know I need to take space or I'm going to get crushed. He's the highest rated player I've ever beat, almost 2100. If he had beaten me this game, I would have given him the 3 points necessary to hit his 2100. Anyway, so now he attacks my knight, and I just defend it. And I love my setup because I'm just saying no to his pins. He's trying to develop his bishops, and I'm just saying nope. If you take my knight, I can take you back. But I took back with the pawn because of what I mentioned earlier. Okay, so now he's coming out. I attack. You'll notice he is already he's playing with white against the Sicilian. He knows what he's doing. He's already castled. His development is complete. I still haven't castled, and he has both his bishops, and it looks good. But here I attack the bishop while I have the chance because I want to see what he's going to do. He decides to take. And here I thought, maybe if I take with the pawn, I can open up the rook on the g file and attack his king. But this is a good player, not a bullet game. So I take with the bishop. Also, I want to castle in this direction, and I can't castle in this direction. He's got too much firepower, and my structure. I know I'm playing d5. So that's why I castle here, or take with the bishop here. Even though my bishop is bad now, it was just important for king safety. Then I castle. He plays this move, which is I don't like, but I guess maybe it's theory. I mean, he's trying to get out of my bishops, maybe one day seeing it, and also he knows he's going to battle my queen b6 move with a rook on that file. He doesn't want his pawn to be a target. And then he plays this another peculiar move. See, this is white giving away their advantage, like in my opinion. But anyway, another move that doesn't really threaten anything. And so what's he doing there, right? So I just immediately, so that to me is a huge blunder because I'm trying to get this move in, but I can't because his knight and his pawn and my bishop's in the way. And but then when he moves the knight in a temporary, like I'm sure he's gonna redeploy it or like play this move or something. He has a reason. Maybe he's gonna play this pawn up, but he allows me to play this, and now he can't really take because then I would take back and have a good center. But then you see his point. He's like, I want my knight over here. So I actually kind of grew to like that maneuver. But still, he shouldn't have let me do this. So now I come in here, and this is just letting my queen see this point. I can't just take because then his knight would take back and attack my bishop, and that would make his plan worthwhile. And also, this pawn is kind of weird here, and my queen is blocked. So first, I play here, and now both my bishops are protected, and they're protecting central key pawns that are soon to be destroyed, and then they will see the board. And you'll see that becomes important that they're protected later. Now, he plays this move, another kind of slow move. Like, okay, like what are you accomplishing there? Maybe he's trying to break in the middle with his own c4. Now I just deploy the queen out to attack this because now that he's played b3, he can't play a3. I would just take it. So he's got to play a4, which defends it. But my idea is I'm getting the queen out of the way because I don't ever want to trade queens. I want my rook here so that when I play pawn takes and attack the bishop, if he can't take back with the bishop because then my rook would take his queen. So I develop my queen with an attack. So it's my turn again, even though I'm accomplishing my plan, see? And now I decide between rooks, and I choose this one because it's only going 2 squares. Whereas if this one goes 3 squares, I only have 1 square for the other rook. But by going here, this rook still has a couple squares. And I guess that was kind of my logic there. And I want extra protection on the queen side. Like, you know, if I go over there, if I leave this rook here, that means I need a king side something. But here, I'm like, my king's safe. I'm happy with these bishops, so let's get some queen side rooks. So I bring the king side to the middle. But the important thing is putting a rook in the queen's face. Okay, so now he immediately gets out of the side because this is a high-level game. And now he is threatening to infiltrate with the knight, which would be protected by the bishop and the pawn, and harass my king if the queen can somehow, you know, join the fun. And he's also threatening pawn takes, and kind of like this diagonal, my c pawn is kind of weak, but right now it's well defended just because it's the anchor to my position and he can't attack it directly. So here I take. This is a bad move by me. I just completely forgot that he would, because he's kind of asking me to take, because if I take, I'm attacking 2 pieces at once and he has to do something. And I open up my rook and bishop, and yeah, but I just forgot that he could take with the knight, and now my bishop is in trouble because he's threatening to take it, which is check, and then if I take back, he can play queen takes and hit my rook, and he win a pawn. And also, if he moves the queen to the side to g3, and then he takes with check, I can't take back because my king would be pinned, or the pawn would be pinned because the queen would be hitting my king, so my g-pawn wouldn't be defending the bishop, which is under attack and not attacking it. So anytime a knight is looking at a bishop and a bishop is not looking back at it, like this, especially when the king pawn is supposed to protect it, this is dangerous. So here I said nice move to the guy, and then but that got deleted because I did the analysis. Okay, so now I go back here, and I am blocking the knight all his forward movement, and I'm also not allowing him to take, and I can abandon my king slightly because he doesn't have an immediate punch. My king is defending everything, and none of his pieces are actually attacking anything now that my bishop is out of the way of the queen and the knight. So it's his turn here, and I actually have a nice position here. And then he plays knight back. And I think I'm winning in this game, and I want to get this rook in the game, but I don't want to make a stupid move like rook b8 because it doesn't do anything. I mean, maybe I could bring the rook up, but the whole idea is to develop your pieces as quickly and efficiently as possible. So in a perfect world, I would play my rook up and then the other rook right behind it. So it's the minimal amount of moves, like 1, 2, 3, and then I already have the gun set up. So here I just dropped this pawn. Part of it is me not seeing it, and also part of me is just long term. I have no plans for this pawn, and at this point I have enough compensation with the bishop pair defending everything in the center and a nice pawn, and he can take this with a queen and just wander into danger. And in the meantime, I did calculate this, okay, now that I think about it, because I remember thinking if he takes, I'm going to play here. But then once he took, of course, I'm like, oh God, what have I done? But I decided to stick to the plan instead of playing something like rook c8 attacking the queen. I just stick to the plan. Why did I sack that pawn? To double up rooks. It'll come in handy later. This bishop can't stay here forever, especially when I can attack it with a pawn. So now he goes here. I think that's another bad move by him because now his rooks are too close and this one can't move. So I can attack it with the bishop if I want in some cases. So here he's attacking my pawn, which is just kind of alone. The queen I have out here is defending it. So it's actually not really under attack. And here I decide to attack his queen. And I could play bishop d5, which attacks the queen and at the same time goes on a diagonal, which would be great. If this knight was my queen and then I could play that move and checkmate, that'd be great. But his knight is blocking any sort of frontal attack combining with the bishop move. So it actually doesn't accomplish anything. So, and also if I play that move, his reply, you have to think of what is his reply to bishop d5. His reply is queen b5. And then my queen is kind of trapped almost. And he's forcing an exchange and he's on a comfortable square, protected square with the bishop and everything. And if I take, he'll just be winning because I sacrificed a pawn. So I have to take advantage of his bad position. I have to gain compensation for the sacrifice of a pawn. I'm down 1 pawn. He's +1. So I attack the bishop, not allowing queen to b5. I'm just like, I want to attack the queen, but I don't want to... And my rooks are both sufficiently defended so that I can temporarily disconnect them. Otherwise I wouldn't. And so I attack the queen. When in doubt, attack a queen. And now it can't go here, but he goes here, which I kind of didn't see, but it's not as good. It does attack my pawn, but again, I'm willing to sacrifice this pawn. By the time he wins my stupid pawns over here and tries to queen, with all my activity here, I will get a back rank problem going on for him, and he will have to retreat, and I will win all his pawns. You'll see. But that type of play with white doesn't work. That's why he wants to trade queens. That's what he's really doing. But I keep the queen on and keep my pawn too temporarily. And I could redeploy to here, but I decided to go back to play bishop to c6 at some point. And the idea kind of just maybe getting the queen and the bishop in some type of diagonal. But I don't know. Maybe the computer will like that more. But I go back. And then he attacks my bishop. He's just going for exchanges and going to try to claim that the pawn is better. His pawn advantage is winning. But this bishop is tied to the defense of this pawn, which ties together his entire advantage. And so I want to just take it. And then, but the problem is the knight would recapture and hit my bishop with a check if I don't react, and then suddenly his knight's in my 50-yard line, and you don't want that. So I go here, and because the bishop kind of made a little trip. Instead of immediately taking this diagonal and allowing a queen prominent position, I chose to kind of sneak around and do it this way, so that now the bishop still has this diagonal and the queen doesn't. And now all my pieces are starting to get their long range abilities aimed at the king, because you'll notice the rooks are ready to checkmate if these rooks get out of there, and the bishop's ready to pounce, and then this bishop's coming, and the queen is very quick. And so here he goes back, and he's kind of insisting in exchange. And in this position, it's different. Here, if I take the bishop, he takes and it attacks my rook. That's not good for me, because then I don't have time to take his pawn, which is the whole point of taking the bishop. So instead, I take this diagonal, this massive diagonal. He's like, I'm not going to let you do that. I have sufficient protection to stop this. And I'm like, yeah, you do, but I will take it, and then I will take your pawn. But then in this position, I saw a better move, which is, it's funny, if I take the pawn, I abandon my own pawn. And so what? I don't care about pawns. But the problem is my bishop is undefended. So if my queen goes pawn hunting over here trying to win these pawns, what's he going to do? Well, he's just going to take my pawn that I left behind and then take my bishop that I left behind. So I can't take here with my plan. I have to first throw in this move, which frees the bishop from being lost in the variation from the queen. That's the only reason I'm making this move. That's what's so crazy. But anyway, so I'm attacking the rook, and now he defends the pawn and recognizes that my idea was he recognized that my idea was getting the bishop out of that variation. I'm sure he was calculating that thing, and that's why he's now defending this pawn, because he knows that me taking that pawn and attacking the knight is too good, and him taking this pawn is too small, because if he leaves a piece hanging, he doesn't have a piece to get back, because my bishop's not there anymore. So he defends the pawn. But because of the way his rooks are, he should have one rook here and one rook here, but because of the way he was playing with his rooks, he just blunders a knight here, and I can just take the knight, and there's nothing he can do about it. But instead, I got paranoid about his pawn pressing up and attacking both my pieces at the same time, and I'm calculating, well, I could move back and hit the queen, but then the knight could get me. I don't know what to do. So I did not see. Also, he has 5 minutes here, and I have 3 minutes here left in the entire game. And I don't have a huge advantage yet, even though I do, actually, just because of this move gives me a piece. But I missed it. And so I thought for like 30 seconds or less, and then I played this move thinking, well, this is a good move. This was part of my plan of playing the bishop out here, was the idea that if he ever tries to defend this pawn, I can just attack it, and he can't attack me, because then I'll just play bishop b2 and attack him. And then when he moves again, I can take with the queen and defend my bishop. But anyway, rooks have trouble chasing out a bishop in these situations. So anyway, he goes, I attack the rook, and he's like, well, fine, I'll go back and defend the knight I just blundered. And I'm like, damn it, now I can't take it, but at least I insisted that I got my pawn. He's like, no, take my knight. And I'm like, no, I want the pawn. And he's like, okay. So I take the pawn, and now he saves his knight, and he's offering me another pawn, but he's also discovered an attack on my e-pawn. And in this position, I have 2 minutes, and I thought for like 40 seconds, and I decided to push the pawn. I'm sacrificing this pawn, but I'm attacking this pawn, and I defended my center pawn because I didn't want to defend it with a pawn and open up queen e7 or e6 check. And I was calculating that, and I hated it, because it not only does it check me if I try to defend this pawn, it defends his weakness that I'm about to win. And I need to win that. Otherwise, I won't be able to win the game. All right, so then I play that. He makes this bizarre move, which is he probably thinks I'm going to run out of time, and he's not allowed to get back. He won't get back rank mated anymore, but still, the situation's too important to be making a move like that, in my opinion. So now, because he gives me this pawn now, and now he, because my queen takes the pawn, I'm no longer, and this was maybe a bad move of me to take the pawn, but I just did it because I had to do something. And he's not prepared to do this type of thing. So he comes out and takes the pawn, and it looks like my queen's out of position, but the queen is never out of position, like almost ever. So I take it and lure the knight out, and then I have rook up here attacking the knight. The knight is undefended and has nowhere to go, and the rook also attacks this pawn, and the queen cannot take my pawn because I will take his knight. And the queen, well, he's smart, so he checks me. It's thinking, haha, you know, you don't get to. Normally, he would move the knight away, and then I would take the pawn with an attack on the queen, preventing the queen from attacking my pawn, winning the game, because then I would have a pawn and he wouldn't, and I would march down and queen. So then he could, like, this pawn is a critical advantage, whoever wins the pawn. So he marches, he checks me, and in this position, I decide the bishop doesn't really belong here. I'm gonna bring him back. Because I was calculating all sorts of king movements and setups, and none of them were working against his queen. So I'm like, I'll just block with my bishop. And sometimes this is bad because now my bishop can't move. So for example, he could play knight to c5, which he plays, and after thinking for like 50 seconds, he plays it. And it's funny because it looks like a good move because when my bishop was here, I had completely shut out this knight. This knight cannot attack my queen because the rook and the bishop defend the two squares. But when I go here, suddenly my bishop, what have I done? I've nerfed all these light dark squares the knight can now use. Luckily, my rook and queen control some, but he can attack my queen and get closer to my king. Like if he plays knight d whatever, d7, he will checkmate me because my bishop can't get away and pin and win. But in this position, he walks into a pin of his own because his queen is undefended here and it has nothing good. It has no checks. And in it's funny because I only have less than a minute here. So that took me 5 seconds to decide to block with the bishop. Then he thinks for 50 seconds here and plays the brilliant, the move that looks good. But the problem is I had time to think while he was thinking, and I thought, if he sees that my bishop is no longer defending this and he thinks he can attack me, I can, I have such a good rook, and his rook is so bad that I can pin the knight with the queen. And the knight has no moves that the queen can't kill. And his queen is under attack. If the knight moves, I take his queen, and his knight can't move and defend the queen at the same time. And if he tries to coordinate the two together and get the queen on c7 so he can play knight to a6 and defend the queen as he's hopping away and out of the pin, it's too late because I have rook to c5 ready to team up with the queen and just obliterate his knight, not to mention my bishop. So there's nothing he can do at this point because the bishop now is working, because no matter what he plays, my next move can be queen takes knight. If he moves his queen, for example, I can even queen c7, I can play queen takes knight, and then if he takes me, he's no longer pinning my bishop, and I can take back. And I'll have a bishop, a pawn, and my rook will be fighting for this pawn. So in this position, we're both calculating this end game of, if he loses the knight, can I win this end game in 40 seconds? So he finds the brilliant knight move, sacrificing his queen with a discovered attack on my queen, and also attacking my rook and bishop, threatening like checkmate. If I mess up, he can check me here, and win the bishop with the queen. And then when I move, he can checkmate me on g7. If I take the knight, he would take my queen. So this square is unprotected because of the discovered attack on my own queen. And I have to process all this in 7 seconds. So I decide to take the queen without analyzing it too much. I'm just like, okay, well, he's giving me his queen, and I don't see anything wrong with it, so I take it. But then I realize, oh no, my rook's gone. So that was a good move by him, his little do-si-do. Got my rook, sacrificed his queen, saved his knight. My turn. I play immediately a5, thinking I'm going to redeploy my bishop out to here, but the pawn and the bishop are going to defend each other. Therefore, I can move my queen quickly in the 30 seconds that I have, and I never have to worry about my bishop getting taken, because if it ever gets taken, I will take it back. And I never have to worry about my pawn getting taken, because if it gets taken, I will take it with the bishop. So even if it's not the best way to play, it's the smartest way to play with low time. So I attack the rook, beautifully defending my pawn, and can I checkmate him in 33 seconds when he only has a minute now? At one point he was way up on the clock, but now it's evening out. And here I play queen d7, attacking the knight and the pawn at the same time, thinking that he can't defend both, but he does with the ridiculous knight b5. And then I spot the queen d8 or queen d1 check, winning, sneaking behind the knight, which thinks it's like every time he makes a good move, I one-up him, and so I check him and then win the pawn. And then you see how devastating the queen is in an open board like this when the other team doesn't have a queen. So even though it's a 2-on-2, my queen is just too good. And so now he is under attack, so he tries to get away, but he walks immediately into a pin, and he has no discovered attack on my queen because the queen defends all the knight squares in that direction. So the knight goes out here. I can take the rook. Now I have, when he plays, so it takes me 3 seconds to move here. All right. Then I see that he blocks it, and it takes me another 3 seconds to see this move check. And then it takes me another 4 seconds to realize I can win the pawn and he can't do anything about it. Then it takes me 4 seconds to see this pin, double pin. And then here, I'm sure I immediately took, 3 seconds. And now he's down to 7 seconds suddenly, and it's 16-7. And it's just a queen versus a knight. And in this position, I play queen to a8 with the idea of just pushing the pawn all the way up, forcing the knight to give itself up for it, and then checkmating him that way, or hopefully just winning the knight in the process. So here he immediately blunders his knight. Probably he's blundered this multiple times and I haven't gotten it. Here, if I didn't have 14 seconds, I would have seen queen e4 check, winning the knight when the king moves, because he has no way to block it and save the knight. But instead I play my plan, which is a very quick, within a second, a4, just getting closer to queen. Now he attacks my queen, and I play check. Anytime I'm under attack, just boom, check. And in this position, I saw, after I play a5 and he's on the clock, I saw, oh, I should have played this. So he gets out of it and attacks me. And then in 2 seconds, I check him to get out of the attack. And now here, I could win the knight again with some triangulation with c5 check, queen c5 check, but I miss it again, and I play, in my opinion, a really good move because he only has 2 seconds left. So I play queen a5. Now I'm behind the pawn because in the other position I was in front of the pawn. So what do? I go as far up as possible until he stops me from doing that. Then I check to get out of the way, get behind. Then I in less than a second move here, and he because he needs to stop me from going down there and queening, so he blocks the pawn. But now I have this move, and the knight cannot escape the death from the queen. It's under attack, and if it tries to escape to c2 2, I could play queen b1 check and win the knight. And that move I don't think I would miss because it's right there. It's just right there. So he ran out of time here. Or, yeah, white timeout. So crazy game. And we'll do a quick stockfish analysis. Okay, so you'll notice, yeah, normally I would play this move and develop this way, but I just kind of felt like I had enough going on for getting away with e5. And then here, before castling, I just make the slight alteration of this, daring him to take and giving me the bishop here. And here I take correctly. And then C, of course, he gives me an advantage with that move. C, much more natural, is bishop taking the diagonal or expanding with a pawn. So here, interesting suggestion. I do love that move now, looking at it, but I've played castle. Right, then he goes back, C, blundering my pawn move. And he should be fighting for this square, but he doesn't understand the position well enough. Backs up. Now I get the center, and I'm winning because I'm black, but I'm winning because I played the Sicilian Defense. I baited him into an exchange that I was sufficiently protected, and my king has a good structure, and bishop pair. My major pieces are connected, and I have 3 center pawns, and I'm looking good. And his knight is in the back. So he goes there. And I thought about this move. I thought I could just shut out the knight, because why let the knight into f5? But see, as the computer keeps thinking, it thinks, no, maybe you should do something on the queen side. But here I played bishop here, keeping an advantage because my queen just got a lot better. So that's it's one of the best moves, computer says. I keep my advantage. Now here, that's another, wow. Yeah, I don't know. I don't get that move. So here it likes queen c7, which is where I ultimately ended up. But here I put the rook here, and queen c7 comes soon. So this is my first mistake. Taking here was a mistake because of the knight. Oh, well, the computer wants to take with the bishop and get this massive diagonal. I was actually wanting him to take with the bishop. That was what I calculated. I didn't calculate knight. If he took with the bishop, I was going to play rook here and sacrifice this and play that. This is what I had in my head. And I thought this was good for black. But that was my plan. But anyway, he took with the knight, and then I back up, which is the best move, not allowing the exchange. Then here, I sack the pawn. He takes it, which isn't the best move. See, computer understands. Don't do it. And he takes it, and then I go with my plan, best move, and then attack the queen. Best move was attack the rook, which I did later. But for now, attack the queen, and then when he tries to force an exchange, so best move was to go there or there. And he tries to force the issue, and I have queen c7 here, and then it's an even game, and he has 6 minutes, and I have 4. And I mean, I have 352, he has 621, which is a pretty big difference. That's like almost 2-1. And so I play a bishop move, getting out of the exchange, and then he tries to go back, and then that's my best opportunity to take now. You always got to take at the right time. And then here, just take the pawn, but instead I attack the rook. And I didn't notice that he could play this move. I forgot that the knight defended that. But he did too. He blunders his knight. I miss it. He goes back. I take the pawn. I didn't even notice that until after the game that I had blundered the knight. Maybe I did. All right, now he attacks or I decided to defend my pawn in the middle instead of this one, which computer doesn't like. But here, like I said, when he made that move, I get a pawn, and then I get a rook fork, and when he checks me, it doesn't work because my bishop does a great job defending my back row. My rook and queen are super active. His rook and pawn or his knight and his pawn are under attack at the same time. And he doesn't have the move which defends the pawn, attacks the queen, and gets out of the rook's way. It doesn't work because of the move I played in 2 seconds because I had prepared it. I'm like, if he goes here, I'm going here. And first I calculated this, of course, but I decided to go here just in case I wanted to play the rook. Like, why not leave the square for the rook? Not sure why the computer thinks this is better, because I like this because the rook, if he plays rook here, I can play rook here, right? Okay, no, because then he would sacrifice. Right. Well, computers are assholes. But I wouldn't have, I mean, for the record, he thought for a minute and 50 seconds, and during that time, I definitely calculated, if he plays this move, I'm taking. Because he can't take back, because I have this, and this is not checkmate because I have that. And then I'm just dominating here. So there's no preventing queen takes knight. So he plays, I wonder what the best move is. So they're saying best move is here, and then you do attack the rook. What about this direction? Yeah. So as you can see, there's just no way to prevent his position from falling apart. He's losing a knight and the pawn. The question is, can I hold on to my pawn? And in the game, he makes that move, giving up the queen, winning the rook, and then I develop my bishop, and then I attack the knight and win the pawn, pin the knight, win the rook, and then go to the back row to push up, lure the knight away, check, then get behind the pawn, and then attack the knight when it tries to blockade. And the king is so exposed, the knight is going to die, and I'm going to queen and checkmate. Even in 10 seconds. Even in 10 seconds. I would be able to do it. Because his move is here, and then I would play this, and the clock's only running when it's my turn. So if he takes like a couple seconds, I've already calculated, then I'm taking the knight, and then he would take like a second and play like this move, and then I would play that. And then as he's playing this move, I would pre-move. So like, for example, I would pre-move here, and then so as soon as he moves here, I would already have a queen. And then when he moves here, it would be game over because check, check, checkmate. And I wouldn't be that smart. I would checkmate him like, I would get the 2 queens, and then in this position, I'd probably play check, and then if here, that's a little too smart for me. That's brutal. Just walking into the pin knowing that there's mate here. I was thinking I would play this, knowing that I can take this next turn and it's practically mate. And if he escapes, I have I wouldn't play that. I'd probably find this checkmate. Anyway, I'll show you real quick. It says highest rating is February 4th, 2022, and best rated victory is that guy. We could do. All right, thank you.